1. Which of the following best describes the primary mission of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, ACFE? A. To provide legal representation for fraud victims. B. To reduce the incidence of fraud and white-collar crime, and to assist members in fraud detection and deterrence. To prosecute individuals accused of financial crimes. D. To offer insurance policies against corporate fraud. 2. What are the 4 major components of the CFE examination that candidates must pass? A. Accounting, auditing, law, and statistics. B. Financial transactions and fraud schemes, law, investigation, and fraud prevention and deterrence. C. Ethics, compliance, risk management, and internal controls. D. Forensic accounting, criminal justice, corporate governance, and technology. 3. According to the ACFE's report to the nations, what is the most common method by which occupational fraud is initially detected? A. External audit. B. Internal audit. C. Tips from employees, customers, or vendors. D. Management review. 4. In fraud examination, what does the fraud triangle theory propose as the 3 elements necessary for fraud to occur? A. Opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. B. Motive, means, and opportunity. C. Greed, need, and circumstance. D. Intent, capability, and access. 5. Which professional standard requires CFEs to maintain confidentiality regarding information obtained during fraud examinations? A. Generally accepted auditing standards. B. EC Code of Professional Ethics. C. Sarbanes-Oxley Act requirements. D. International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS. 6. What is the recommended approach when conducting a fraud examination interview with a suspected perpetrator? A. Begin with direct accusations to gauge immediate reactions. B. Start with non-threatening questions and gradually move to more specific inquiries. C. Immediately read Miranda rights before any questioning. D. Conduct the interview in public to ensure transparency. 7. Under the ACFE Code of Professional Ethics, what is the consequence for a CFE who is convicted of a felony? A. Mandatory continuing education requirement. B. Temporary suspension pending review. C. Automatic revocation of CFE credential. D. Written warning with probationary status. 8. Which financial statement analysis technique is most effective for identifying potential revenue recognition fraud? A. Vertical analysis only. B. Horizontal analysis comparing revenue growth to accounts receivable growth. C. Cash flow statement review exclusively. D. Equity analysis. 9. What is the primary purpose of conducting a fraud risk assessment in an organization? A. To eliminate all possibility of fraud occurrence. B. To identify and prioritize fraud risks and implement appropriate controls. C. To satisfy external audit requirements only. D. To determine employee bonuses based on ethical behavior. 10. In asset misappropriation schemes, which of the following represents the largest median loss according to CFE research? A. Cash theft schemes. Billing schemes. C. Non-cash misappropriations, inventory and equipment. D. Payroll schemes. 11. What is the legal concept that allows employers to be held liable for the actions of their employees when those actions occur within the scope of employment? A. Strict liability. B. Respondeat superior. Contributory negligence. Proximate cause. 12. Which data analytics technique is most useful for detecting duplicate payment fraud in accounts payable? A. Regression analysis. B. Fuzzy matching and duplicate detection algorithms. C. Time series forecasting. D. Cluster analysis only. 13. According to adult learning principles in fraud examination training, which approach is most effective? A. Lecture-based instruction with minimal interaction. B. Problem-based learning using real case studies and practical applications. C. Memorization of fraud examination procedures. D. Theoretical framework discussion without examples 14. What is the primary difference between criminal fraud and civil fraud in terms of burden of proof? A. There is no difference in burden of proof. B. Criminal fraud requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil fraud requires preponderance of evidence. C. Civil fraud has a higher burden of proof than criminal fraud. D. Both require unanimous jury decisions. 15. Which internal control component of the COSO framework directly addresses the ethical tone set by organizational leadership? A. Risk assessment. B. Control activities. C. Control environment. D. Monitoring activities. 16. In conducting a net worth analysis during a fraud investigation, what is the examiner primarily attempting to establish? A. The suspect's creditworthiness. Evidence of unexplained increases in wealth that may indicate illicit income. C. Tax liability for the current year. D. Investment portfolio performance. 17. What is the recommended retention period for fraud examination documentation according to professional standards? A. 1 year after case completion. B. 3 years minimum or longer if required by law or regulation. C. 6 months after final report issuance. D. Indefinitely for all cases. 18. Which of the following anti-fraud controls is considered most cost-effective for small organizations? A. Implementing expensive fraud detection software. B. Hiring a full-time internal audit department. C. Management review and approval processes with segregation of duties. D. Annual external forensic audits. 19. When evaluating the effectiveness of an organization's fraud hotline, which metric is most important? A. Total number of calls received regardless of validity. B. Percentage of substantiated reports that lead to corrective action. C. Average call duration. D. Number of anonymous versus identified callers. 20. In fraud examination curriculum development, what is the primary reason for including behavioral red flag indicators? A. To stereotype certain personality types as fraudsters. B. To help examiners recognize warning signs that warrant further investigation. C. To replace financial analysis techniques. D. To provide entertainment value in training sessions. 21. Which Sarbanes-Oxley Act SOX section specifically requires management to assess and report on internal controls over financial reporting? A. Section 302. B. Section 404. C. Section 802. D. Section 906. 22. What is the primary purpose of conducting a predication analysis before launching a formal fraud investigation? A. To immediately terminate suspected employees. B. To determine if sufficient basis exists to warrant the time and expense of an investigation. C. To satisfy insurance claim requirements. D. To inform law enforcement before gathering any evidence. 23. In mentoring new fraud examiners, which competencies should be emphasized first? A. Advanced data analytics programming. B. Professional skepticism and critical thinking skills. C. Courtroom testimony techniques. D. International fraud law expertise. 24. Which communication technique is most effective when presenting fraud examination findings to non-financial executives? A. Using highly technical accounting terminology. B. Presenting visual aids with clear, concise explanations focused on business impact. C. Providing only raw data without interpretation. Emphasizing complex legal citations. 25. Under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA, which of the following is prohibited? A. All international business transactions. B. Bribing foreign government officials to obtain or retain business. C. Hiring foreign nationals for domestic positions. D. Exporting technology to specific countries. 26. What is the primary advantage of using continuous monitoring technology in fraud prevention? A. It eliminates the need for internal controls. B. It provides real-time or near real-time detection of anomalies and potential fraud. C. It replaces the need for fraud examiners. D. It guarantees zero fraud occurrence. 27. In developing a fraud awareness training curriculum, how often should refresher training be provided to employees? A. Only during initial onboarding. B. Every 5 years. C. Annually or when significant policy changes occur. Only when fraud is discovered. 28. Which element of the ACFE Code of Professional Ethics requires CFEs to exhibit the highest level of integrity? Objectivity, professionalism, confidentiality. D. All of the above. 29. When conducting a fraud risk assessment interview with department managers, what questioning approach yields the most valuable information? A. Closed-ended yes-no questions only. B. Open-ended questions that encourage discussion of processes and potential vulnerabilities. C. Leading questions that suggest expected answers. D. Hypothetical scenarios unrelated to their operations. 30. Which accounting concept is most frequently exploited in financial statement fraud? A. Historical cost principle. B. Revenue recognition and the matching principle. C. Going concern assumption. D. Full disclosure principle. 31. What is the primary regulatory requirement for maintaining CFE certification? A. Annual reexamination. B. 20 continuing professional education CPE credits annually, including 2 hours in ethics. C. Publishing research papers annually. D. Conducting at least 5 fraud investigations per year. 32. In evaluation of anti-fraud programs, which key performance indicator KPI best measures program effectiveness? A. Number of training hours delivered. B. Reduction in fraud losses and incidents over time. C. Size of compliance department budget. D. Number of policies created.